Hi, I'm Greg Murphy and I'm here with Nathan Wallis, neuroscience educator. And in this episode, we're talking about the benefits of technology in transport. Great to see you, Nathan.
Kia ora, Greg.
Referring to what's happened over the years with the development of so much technology in motor vehicles, which I see is all to do with trying to fill the voids of humans making mistakes or doing the wrong things to try and assist. I mean, it started with ABS, anti-lock braking systems in cars, you know, to stop the front wheels locking up so people didn't jump on the brakes at the wrong time and skid off the road. And then we've got traction control and, stability control and blind spot this and adaptive cruise control, all this kind of stuff, so we don't have to hit the brakes. And all that. We've got so much tech, and then the stuff that's now available, the amazing technology that's available to help truck drivers, with their fatigue and distraction management, all that kind of stuff. We've got all these tools now, but there's still a misunderstanding or lack of information or a resistance to engage with this stuff. And utilise it and accept that it's there to support. What's wrong with us? Sometimes.
Well, I mean, you can understand it from a brain point of view because the prime directive is survival. So that means it doesn't really like adapting to new change because the brain's basically got a program running that says whatever you're doing right now isn't killing you, so just keep doing that. So you're literally, when you're faced with let's just do things how I've always done it, or let's just try it this new way, if you choose to do things how you've always done it, you're rewarded with a little burst of endorphins to go, good on you. Don't take the risk of doing something new. So we're actually biologically pre-programmed to be a bit resistant to that. The older we are, the stronger that kicks in, or the more predisposition there
arrogance? Is it?
Well, it's more just about survival. I suppose we can interpret it as arrogance.
Yeah.
And we get arrogant about, no, I don't need that, and I've been doing it this way for 20 years, and I've been successful, so I don't need it. But it sits on top of that general human resistance to change. I mean, even when you're not consciously resisting. My latest car was the first car to have a reverse camera. And I noticed myself, even understanding how the brain works, it was very, very hard for me I had to do both at the same time. The program I didn't trust, my body does not trust looking this way and reversing the whole time.
Yeah.
It took, so I knew the camera. I knew technically that is an image of what's behind me. But in another part of my brain didn't believe it and needed to check as well. I'm good now. I've had the experience and I've built up the trust that I can just use the camera. But that's that example of your brain doesn't trust that change. My brain's had 100% success rate at not backing into things when I look. I think it's 100%. But so it doesn't want to adapt to this new camera one. It's generally programmed not to adapt to change. So, and then like I say, the older we get, the more we're like that. So
it's really interesting though. I mean, we know so much more information, and we know that these things are happening. Like people are falling asleep, people are distracted now. We know we're doing this stuff, and yet we still don't want to be told, or we don't want to be corrected by something that's there to actually help because of our lack of concentration on something like that.
That's probably partly a drive to succeed too. I know I'm doing it successfully and the way I'm doing it now, and you want to introduce this new thing that sort of technically tells me is going to be better, but it's not necessarily better. You must have had the same thing in car racing with is there a resistance to new technology I can't think of an example, but having to wear helmets. What example have you had? That's going back a fair while.
But that goes back. But probably
what's the more recent?
There was probably a resistance to wear helmets.
Especially
when you look at what they were like. 60 years ago, they didn't really do anything. You're right, absolutely, and I do recall quite vividly. I think it was like 2002 or 2003. A new safety device was introduced, and it wasn't mandatory at the time, but it's become basically mandatory in every racing championship now, which was a head and neck support, so a hands device. Very clever piece of tech, quite simple carbon fibre sort of brace kind of thing that sits over your shoulders. The seatbelts come down over the top of it, and then you tether it to these posts on your helmet.
Okay.
And it allows you still to move your head and everything, but it's designed to restrict movement in mostly in frontal impacts. So when you come to a complete stop, it stops your head from coming off or coming down to meet the steering wheel or stretching further. And I remember, like, I just hated that whole idea of having this thing that's restricting a little bit of movement. Well, I thought it was, and sitting on my shoulders. It's just totally against it. It's like, nah, it's not. I'll be fine. I'll be, I remember that now. I'm used
to doing it this way.
Yeah, and how ridiculous that was. But it was just a change. It was a change that I didn't want to know about. But then Holden at the time. We were all factory supported drivers, and they went, here's one of these. We are doing this because we believe it's a good thing, and if you are involved with us in any way, shape or form, you have to wear it.
Right, yeah.
I was like, ugh, I have to wear it. But, since then I've never not gotten a race car pretty much, I don't think, without wearing one. Because it's just part of, again, that routine and the brain, and just accept it, and it's part of getting in the race car is having this thing on your neck, sitting on your neck and strapped down to your shoulders, and you know that it does actually work. So I suppose in that respect, other technology that's happened, there is, depending on which cars and things you drive, definitely there's just evolutions because of some race cars are more aligned with being a road going version, and so they've got a lot of technology in them that does actually help and support, but you've got to maximise it too. You do use it to affect and make you faster and make you better at doing the job. And I think there's clearly a lot of technology these days in cars, trucks, road vehicles that is misunderstood, not well informed to the user. Which actually can then become, in some ways, a little bit of information can be quite dangerous. So there's not enough information, not enough training around all that stuff, and then there is the technology obviously that is being more widely used around supporting that fatigue and distraction stuff, which but some people won't accept it, which is interesting.
Yeah, because when you said that, they just made it the rule. Holden just said you have to wear this. In some ways, that can be a blessing because your brain that doesn't want to accept change, it has a bit of a grumble about it, but does flick into, well, okay, I've got to do this, and then you quickly adapt to it. Whereas your brain left to its own devices and you're given that choice, it's almost like the older you are, the less likely you are to pick up that choice. So, but you don't really want a culture where everything's just top down and you're told what to do all the time. So it's trying to ride the balance between those two.
But it is being told what to do. So and a bit of misinformation can spread very quickly about stuff, right? And it's easy for some people to actually just not want to know about it, so therefore they want to spread that information, the misinformation about it to anybody that will listen.
Yeah, you said about helmets not really doing much for a start, so people are suspicious for a start about where is the actual evidence to show this is helpful. And when we put cameras into trucks or vehicles, there can be a general mistrust that is that going to be used to spy on me? Is that going to be put on the internet, me picking my nose? It's going to be used for a purpose that it's not used for. So there's a whole lot of mistrust, and so it's very much about working with the brain, but also the culture of the place that you're working with.
But I think, but also now too, with a lot of the stuff that we've talked about around lifestyles and the pressures and the stress and all this kind of stuff. Clearly the need for support to to help us if we are going through that stuff is almost become. It's almost become a necessity for safety. Yeah.
People often need the why, don't they? Rather than just the how of do this. They need to know why they're doing it to get that buy-in. Yeah. And if they do have that knowledge and they know what's happening, they know it's actually going to, it could save their life. They can see that clearly. It could save the lives of their friends. Then they're much more liable to take it on board. So it can be a blessing to go, you've just got to do it, but it's going to get a whole lot more buy-in if they explain to you why it's working and how it's working.
In New Zealand specifically, there's a real culture around driving and continuing to learn and upgrading your skill sets and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't happen.
Right.
So you're 16 years old, you go get your learner's license, 17 or whatever, you get your restricted and you pass that, and then you get your full license, and whammo, got the plastic bloody little license there, and that's the last of me having to worry about driving. I'm now a pro, I've got my full licenses, so and then we just carry on 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the track. We've done no updates, we haven't been plugged in with the USB and upgraded or anything like that. truck drivers have to go through a bit more rigorous sort of training and to get their licenses and all their different classes and things.
Yep.
But depending on where you go from there and who you work for, will depend on if someone's going, well, you need to go and do this, you need to do that. And it can be, it's one of those things you just put on the back burner all the time.
Yep.
And sometimes it can be hard to go and get find someone to go and give you some practical training bits and pieces. But simulation is becoming, quite a big thing. VR, all that kind of stuff, that kind of training. So does sitting in a sim and being put through, I mean, I've done a lot of sim driving, race car stuff and bits and pieces, and it's great training. Like, it's become so good. I mean, that's what I feel anyway. But so if you
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So how would a sim sitting in that virtual world or whatever? Is that a positive thing? Does it work?
Absolutely, it does. I think it's that thing we talked about before. That what you're seeing in front of you is really a constructed reality. Your frontal cortex, that's seeing the rest of the world, doesn't actually, vision and sound and stuff is not connected to your frontal cortex. So that's that thing I said, that 93% of what you're seeing is a constructed reality. So that means when you go into VR, when you go into virtual reality, it's very, very easy for your brain to believe. I mean, I remember the first time I went onto a proper one when I'm standing on top of a mountain holding a sword in this virtual reality game. From a brain and neuroscientist point of view, it was fascinating how quickly my brain adjusted to this is the real. Because this isn't really real. It's 93% a construction of what we think it's going to be. So you apply the same when you go into a VR. It's very easy for your brain to adapt and go, yes, I think this is real. So I think simulators are a great idea. They're really close to being in the real experience because your brain's so easy to fool. It actually made me think, is the world really real? Because if your brain so readily believes the VR game, then of course it would very readily believe this. So, that sort of alternative theory that this world's just a computer animation. After doing VR, I thought, there could be something in that, because your brain does so quickly adapt to the information that you're given and adapt that as real. So I think there's a real role for simulators. They're safer, but your brain sees it as just about as real as actually being out there on the road.
Yeah, so being able to recreate real situations that have happened, and then, they do it with aeroplanes, right? I mean, you get certified, signed off on a sim, on a plane.
Yes.
So, it has to work. You go and reenact a situation on a driving simulator.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly the same thing. Your brain is going to believe, understand, adapt, acknowledge, take in all that information.
And it can be exactly the same. I mean, it's sensible, really. Do you want to fly in a plane where someone's just learning? No, not really. You'd rather they've been in the simulator, done that, If we talk about 90 to 100 times in the brain, that when you form a new neural pathway that contains information on the brain, you've got to cover it with myelin, and that's through repetition. It's this layer of fat that acts like an insulator. It tends to take about 90 repetitions or 90 layers of myelin before that is consolidated in the brain. So we talked about how when you're
repeating the same thing.
Yeah, the same thing. So, when you first learned to tie your shoelaces, that's a motor skill. You had to really focus on make a bunny's ear out of that one. You had to really focus. After you've done that 90 times, it now moves back into that brain number 2 and becomes an automatic. So you can probably tie your shoelaces and talk to me at the same time, because it's now an automatic behaviour. To be safe, you want to get it, to that stage where you've done it so many times, it brings in brain number 2. So a simulator is the perfect way to do that, really. It gives you the 90 opportunities to practice that, so it's really consolidated in the brain.
Hey, thanks, Nathan. Another really insightful discussion. So if you want to check out some more of these, just head to eyesupnz.co.nz.